to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about most New York Giants fans' favorite player in this year's draft, at least at this point in time. I think most Giants fans were on the Chase Young train, and now at least half, if not more, are on the Isaiah Simmons train. A lot of Giants fans want and need the Giants to take Isaiah Simmons at number 4 overall, or if they trade down, take him there. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the pros to his game, some of the cons to his game, and whether, what justifies taking him at the number 4 overall selection. And I certainly think Isaiah Simmons is a potentially great talent in the NFL and a guy that I certainly see the attraction to. I've been a guy that's been pretty outspoken. I do like the idea of going with the offensive tackle. Now, when you put your Dave Gettleman hat on, and if you're being completely honest with yourself, Gettleman invested the second overall pick and the 6th overall pick on a quarterback and a running back, and he has a bad offensive line. So it does not make a lot of sense to me to not try to address that as quickly as possible. You're building your team around these two players. You need to get that fixed sooner than later. Now you could address it in free agency. You could address it, some may argue, in the second round of the draft. And you could definitely argue that. I've tried to present my case as to why I think it's a better idea to address it in the first if you don't bring in a guy like Conklin. But Simmons is certainly a very viable option and a very good option for the New York Giants. We'll talk about his pros. I mean, the NFL is a very evolving league. It is. And the New England Patriots are the team that's usually at the forefront. The Patriots were kind of the team that invented the slot wide receiver, the 2 tight end set, the running, the platoon of running backs. They're always ahead of everybody else. And defenses constantly have to adjust. And one thing that has become more and more increasingly popular over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years has been the usage of the slot. The ability to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand as quickly as possible for efficient passing opportunities. And to combat that, defenses have tried to adjust by having linebackers who could cover these players, who could cover the slot wide receivers, who could cover the running backs, cover the tight ends coming out, running routes. And Isaiah Simmons is a perfect guy to do that. Now, I think a lot of Giants fans may view this guy as a traditional linebacker. He is not. And that is one of the arguments that you could, I suppose, argue against him. If you're looking for a guy that's a traditional run stuffer, things like that, that's not what you're going to get. And it's a position that the New York Giants have kind of neglected really since I've been watching the team. They used to be a team known for their linebackers, right? In the 80s, they had one of the greatest linebacking cores in the history of the sport, if not the greatest linebacking core in the history of the sport. And since then, Jerry Reese has kind of neglected it. Of course, he kind of neglected it. They never spent early picks at that position, and they've suffered because of it. The last good linebacker we've had is really Antonio Pierce, and that was a free agent. We have not drafted a good linebacker in forever. And in today's NFL, it's very important to have a guy like Isaiah Simmons. Corey Littleton's available in free agency. I think he's a comparable player in the sense that he can do a lot of things. He can cover, guard against the run, things like that, which is exactly what Isaiah Simmons did. And when I pull up the graphic and you see the positions this guy could play, it's incredible. I mean, this guy's incredibly versatile. That is his other biggest strength, and it's what Joe Judge has preached. Joe Judge and Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, want versatility. Who is more versatile in this draft? Nobody. Who is more versatile probably in the last 5 drafts? It's hard to find. A guy his size, 6'4", 230, the ability of him to run, the guy's a former track star, and covered running backs and tight ends and things like that is incredibly valuable. He lined up in the slot. He lined up, as a linebacker. He lined up on the edge. He lined up as an outside cornerback, a safety. He did everything, and I think he'd be able to bring that to the NFL. And you wouldn't have to take him off the field. You could leave him in pass packages. You could leave him in every different type of situation. We've had linebackers like Alec Ogletree, like Mayo, who are kind of guys that are traditional linebackers who are going to guard against the run, but they're not going to help you much in pass protection. That will not happen here. And there are countless times. I call the Giants games. I obviously focus very intently. One of the biggest weaknesses to our defense last year, and we had a lot of them, was the ability to get off the field in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15. And a big reason for that was because of how poorly we covered in the slot. There were so many games where I would see the opposing team, the Bears game comes to mind, there was a ton of them, where they would line up their best receiver in the slot and they'd pick on Ballantyne. Or they'd pick on our linebackers. And Isaiah Simmons presumably would take that away. He'd be much better than what we've had at that, and he'd be great at that. And that's his biggest strength, and I think that's why fans would love this guy and his ability to get after the quarterback, even though I could argue I don't think he's a great pass rusher. I think a lot of his sacks, if you look at the film, came on B-gap blitzes, things like that. But he's definitely a guy that could do a lot of things, and he'd create impact plays. I think that's what people would really like about acquiring Isaiah Simmons, and by no means would I be upset if they brought him in. In terms of his cons, in terms of his weaknesses, I mean, I think what you could argue is he's a guy, what some people may say is he's a guy that's maybe good at a lot of things but not great at anything. He doesn't have a defined position. He's kind of undersized to be that traditional linebacker. That is what people will say, but to what I will say to that is, first off, he could always add a couple of pounds of muscle, 10 pounds or so. But you look at Littleton. Littleton's incredibly effective. Now, he's kind of married to the 3-4 because a lot of people don't view him as that thumper linebacker, but in situations where you might want to run a 4-3 rather, you could line Simmons up in the slot, or you could line him up at the safety position. So you could move him around. He's a jack of all trades player, and he's a guy that I think Joe Judge will be interested in if we are going defense, for the simple reason there's nobody more versatile. And he would add to one of our biggest weaknesses. And I'm going to pull up a chart and show you guys how we rank guarding against the tight end in the passing game. I don't have the chart in front of me, but I'm also going to tell you how we ranked against the running backs in the passing game. And in terms of the slot wide receivers, I couldn't find any information, but I can tell you right now, I watch all the games, and they get killed in the slot time and time and time again. And Simmons would help that. But let's jump into some of the things that I was able to dig up about Simmons. And first thing I'm going to show you guys is his positional versatility. He had 738 snaps. He played 5 different positions. 4 of them, he played over 100 snaps. He played 106 on the D-line, 239 in the box, 256 at slot corner, 7 as the wide corner, and 130 as the deep safety. So there you have it. I mean, the position he had the most snaps at was actually the slot corner, not even the linebacker, because of his coverage skills. And in today's NFL, that is so important. And I'll bring up an article that I was able to dig up from 2018 that was showing the disparity in terms of, using the slot corner as opposed to slot wide receiver, rather, as opposed, to years prior, and the importance that it is in the league and the importance of defenses to try to combat that. Next thing we're going to pull up is how he ranked against the tight end. And like I said, running back, they were the 10th worst in the league, the New York Giants as a team, in terms of coverage. Against the tight end, they ranked 25th in the league, which is 8th worst. They gave up over 51 yards a game. And it's the same thing every year with the New York Giants. I watch this team all the time. Tight ends kill us. Whether it was Jason Witten, whether it was Zach Ertz, whether it was Blake Jarwin. I mean, the tight ends in our division kill us every single week. And this guy is big enough at 6'4" to cover them, and definitely fast enough. I think you could even line him up against slot wide receivers. So that has been a big weakness for the Giants. Think how many times we were in 3rd and 15, 3rd and 10, and we couldn't stop the tight end, or we couldn't stop the slot wide receiver, or the running back catching a ball out of the backfield. The other thing I'll say is he's also got the quickness to be able to guard a mobile quarterback. And, on an RPO, he has the quickness to set the edge and track him down. And I think you'll see that at the combine. So there's some of his strengths and what he would add to some of the New York Giants' weaknesses on defense, which we certainly have a lot. This was an interesting stat I was able to find. In 2018, there was an article written about the usage of the slot wide receiver. They talked about why offenses have done that and what defenses have had to do to adjust. Teams ran 38.1% of their pass patterns from the slot last season, and quarterbacks threw it to the receivers lined up in the slot on 35.5% of their attempts, both highs for the last 10 years. As a result, quarterbacks chuck shorter passes than in any other recent season, averaging 8.25 yards in the air per pass, the lowest number over the past decade. And it also went on to say that they feel like the slot wide receiver position has been undervalued in terms of salary. And I agree with that. And by the same token, if that's undervalued, the players who have to guard them are undervalued. And I agree with that. I think the linebacker position, especially linebackers like Simmons and Littleton, I think have been undervalued because it's becoming more and more increasingly popular for offenses to orchestrate their offense out of the slot. And you need players like Simmons to stop that. And then finally, there was this. The growing use of slot receivers has also had a business side effect on the other half of the matchup. Teams now routinely use 5 backs in their base defenses. Nickelbacks and slot corners, once considered interchangeable, can now become star-level players by shutting down the slot. Former Patriot Logan Ryan signed a 3-year, $30 million deal with the Tennessee Titans this offseason after playing primarily in the slot. So they're just showing you an example of a slot corner getting paid a fairly high salary, even though, 10 years ago, it may not have been looked at as a very important position. Now, it definitely is, which is exactly what Isaiah Simmons could bring to the New York Giants. He could be that guy that's capable of shutting down that strong slot wide receiver, shutting down that mobile tight end, that running back coming out of the backfield. And I think when New York Giants fans see this guy, it's that. It's the athleticism. It's the ability to do everything and fit in Joe Judge's system. And it's why on draft night, if they take him at 4, as long as they have a focus on fixing the O-line in free agency and in the second round of the draft, I'm completely for it. We need as much help on that defense as we can get. And I think we have a lot of really talented young players that have not fully developed yet. But Simmons would be another one of them. Like I said, the only worry with him for me, he's a bit undersized to play linebacker, which is, I think, the position that we'd be playing him at. But in today's NFL, it's not that big of a deal. And you can move him to so many other different spots. And I think he's more than athletic enough to play the safety, to play the slot corner. So I'm not too worried about it. I do think he's going to be a very good player in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be all pro level, but I think he's going to be a very valuable asset to this defense, if we bring him in. Versatility. That's all you hear about, and that's all this guy brings. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.